Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the EOB podcast. So last weekend we have the release of 3 movies, the biggest of which is Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, the sequel to the first movie. The Fantastic Beasts, as you know, is a spin-off of the Harry Potter movies. Let's see how those movies did at the box office. Okay, so let's jump right in. Coming in at number 1 is Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. The movie opens to 62 million in its opening frame. I said the movie could probably open somewhere between 75 to 80 million, but it fell short of that. Only opened up to 62 million. The movie stars Johnny Depp as the villain Grindelwald. Eddie Redmayne returns as Newt Scamander. Jude Law is here. Ezra Miller, Zoe Kravitz, David Yates, who directed a couple of the Harry Potter movies, returns to direct. The first movie opened to 74 million, went on to gross 234 million domestic and 814 million worldwide. Reviews-wise, the movie didn't match up to the first movie. It only has a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes and a B+ cinema score. As a comparison, the first movie has a 74% on Rotten Tomatoes. So as you can see, it's not as well reviewed, as well liked, at least critically, as the first movie. So maybe that's why we see a dip in the box office for the second movie. But generally, sequel has a harder time, capturing the audience unless the first movie blew people away. Typically, the sequel doesn't generate as much of an interest. Alright, so let's move on to number 2, which is Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. In the second weekend, it pulled in 38.6 million, a 43% drop off from the previous weekend. Domestic gross right now is 127 million, but the budget is only 75 million, and that's what these animations by Illumination Studios typically, the budget in budget terms runs. So it's going to be profitable for Universal Pictures. And let's see, overseas it made 25 million overseas for a worldwide total of 152 million. Let's see, the drop off is relatively okay, low. So we're going to see this movie last long into the holiday season. Okay, number 3 is Bohemian Rhapsody, the biopic about the England band Queen. In its third weekend, it pulled in about 16 million, about 49% drop off from the previous week. 128 million domestic so far, and worldwide it is at 385 million. A very successful movie for Fox. It had a trouble production. It was in development for a long time. Rami Malek played the lead of Freddie Mercury. Originally, Sacha Baron Cohen was attached to play, Mercury, but he dropped out, I guess, due to creative differences, and so that's why Rami Malek took over as the lead. All right, let's move on to number 4, one of the new releases last weekend. It is Instant Family. It opened to 14.5 million. I said the movie could open somewhere between 10 to 15 million, and it opened on, just right there, about 14.5 million, almost 15 million, so on the higher end of my projection. It's a comedy starring Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, about a couple who decided to adopt to start their family. They end up falling for a teenage girl who came up with 2 other siblings, and they suddenly had 3 adolescents in their lives, and I guess that's where the laughs comes from, them learning how to become parents. It's well reviewed, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes and a cinema score. Going by the reviews, I expect this movie to have some legs in theaters, so it's gonna again stay in theaters for a while. All right, let's move on to number 5, another new release last weekend. It's Widows, directed by Steve McQueen, who did 12 Years a Slave, starring Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, and others. It opened to about 12.4 million. Overperformed my projections. I say the movie could probably open somewhere between 5 to 8 million. It did way better than that. It's Steve McQueen. You know him for these smaller indie movies, right? But now he's going more commercial, more action in this one. So it's pretty much a female cast who went out to to perform a heist. It's kind of like Ocean's 8, except that more grittier. So it kind of, like I say, performed above my expectations, and let's see where the second weekend brings. It's well reviewed, surprisingly. It's the best reviewed movie of last week's wide releases at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. B cinema score, which is a little bit above average. If this holds, I expect this movie to stay in theaters. All right, let's move on to number 6. It's a holdover from the past weeks. The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. It pulled in 4.8 million over the weekend, 53% drop off from the previous week. So far, it only grossed about 44 million at the domestic box office, but the budget is 120 million. And overseas, it pulled in 72 million for a worldwide total of 116 million. Yeah, it doesn't look like it is catching on overseas as well. At 116 million right now, worldwide, it looks like Disney's gonna have some catching up to do for this movie to become profitable. Okay, number 7 is A Star Is Born. It pulled in 4.3 million over the weekend. It's already in the 7th weekend already. 186 million domestic so far, and worldwide it is at 341 million. Number 8 is Overlord, the action movie, which fell a couple places down. It was number 3 last weekend. Now it's number 8. Dropped 63% from the previous weekend. Pulled in 3.8 million. Domestic gross right now is 17.7 million. The budget is only about 38 million. And overseas, they pulled in about 17 million for a worldwide total of 33 million. So, all in all, I thought this movie could probably perform better than it did. I said the movie could probably open between 15 to 20 million, but it opened to 10, because I said this movie was produced mainly because I thought the J.J. Abrams brand could bring people in. He produced the movie, but unfortunately, for some reason, zombies and World War One right now, at least in this movie, doesn't really work. Which is odd because reviews are good, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes and a B cinema score. But I guess for some reason, zombies and World War II, just like I said, doesn't capture the audience's intrigue, interest. All right, let's move on to number 9, which is The Girl in the Spider's Web. It is based on one of those books in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, right? It pulled in 2.5 million in the second weekend. Huge drop off, 68%. I said the movie could probably open, in about the 10 million range, right? But it only opened to 7.8. Sony did a movie, the first movie with Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara. If they couldn't, open this movie to huge numbers, I don't think her replacement Claire Foy could do it, right? I said the movie doesn't have that big of a following here, and I was right. All right, closing out the top 10 is the documentary Burn the Stage, the movie, which follows the Korean boy band BTS as they go on their tour. It pulled in 2.4 million in its opening weekend. I believe this movie has already opened on streaming in Netflix or something like that. But to pull in 2.4 million for a documentary, about Korean boy band is actually pretty good in the States. All right, that's it for the top 10. Let's move on to the new releases, which are all opening this Wednesday. So we're gonna have a couple. We're gonna have the expansion for Green Book, and then we have Robin Hood, Creed 2, the sequel to Creed, spin-off of the Rocky movies. And then we have Ralph Breaks the Internet, which is Wreck-It Ralph 2, the sequel. All right, let's start off with Green Book. I believe this is an expansion. It's gonna expand to over 1,000 locations. It had its opening last weekend. It opened to about 320K in 25 theaters for a per theater average of 12.8K. So, which is okay. But let's see how well it does once it hits wide, right? The movie is directed by Peter Farrelly, one of the Farrelly brothers, stars Viggo Mortensen, Mahershala Ali, who was in Moonlight and Luke Cage, the TV series. House of Cards, he's in a lot of TV, and he's also in the forthcoming Battle Angel movie. So Mortensen plays a bouncer who has to drive an African-American classical pianist played by Ali on his tour through the Deep South, and they bonded through the trip. And of course, this being the Deep South, right, there's some racial tensions involved as well. Let's see, it has already opened. Since this is expanding on a wide, I believe we're gonna see a 3-day figure of 5 million. For 5 days, I think we're gonna have 7 million for 5 days. Okay, let's move on to Robin Hood. Released by Lionsgate, directed by Otto Bathurst, starring Tager Egerton, who did the Kingsman movies. Jamie Foxx is here, Ben Mendelsohn, Jamie Dornan, Eve Hershon. You can see there's some elements of the Kingsman in here since it's played by the same actor. Alright, for this movie, I think it's gonna open to 15 million 3 days and 20 million 5 days. Alright, let's move on to Creed 2. Michael B. Jordan returns, Sylvester Stallone returns, Tessa Thompson returns, but this one is joined by Dolph Lundgren, who's Draco in the movie, and then Florian Monteau stars as his son. Right, Creed and his and Draco's son has this big fight coming along. So it's kind of like a revisit of the Rocky 2. Stephen Caple Jr. directs. Right now, the movie is relatively well reviewed, 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. For comparison, the first movie opened to 29 million. It went on to make 109 million domestic and 173 million worldwide. But since this movie is opening on a Wednesday on the Thanksgiving holidays, there's Black Friday going on, Cyber Monday going on. So I think the crowd might not turn out for these new movies. So I think the box office is going to be low for Creed and the rest of the new releases, and also the movies in theaters. So for 3 days, I think it's going to open to 15 million 3 days and 20 million 5 days. Alright, finally we come to Ralph Breaks the Internet. It's the sequel to the Wreck-It Ralph movie. It currently is well reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes, 92%. The first movie opened to 94 million, went on to make 189 million domestic and 471 million worldwide. So for the sequel, I think it's going to do a bit better. I mean, regardless of what I said about the holiday season, especially the week of Thanksgiving, with all the big sales going on, I think this movie could do better than the first movie, right? I think it's gonna have a 3-day 50 million opening. For 5 days it's gonna do 60. Alright, that's it for this week's podcast. Let's see how I did with my projections. Until then, take care. Bye bye.